I still don't know if this is a good idea, I whispered to Emily as we stood at the towering gates of her parents' mansion. She tightened her grip on my hand. They'll come around, trust me. Just be yourself. Be myself. If only she knew how much of myself I'd buried to fit this quiet life. Instead, I nodded and pushed the heavy doorbell. It was Margaret, her mother, who opened the door. Her eyes darted to my face, then to my plain jacket, then down to my shoes. Her lips curled. "You brought him," she said flatly. Emily sighed. "Mom, please, enough of that." Margaret stepped aside without a smile. "Your father's in the lounge. Daniel's here too. Try not to embarrass us." The words pierced, but I followed Emily inside anyway. Thomas, her father, rose when he saw me. His handshake was limp, formal. "So this is the man. Sit down." Daniel, her younger brother, leaned back on the sofa, smirking. "This is the famous husband? I thought you said he worked in finance. Where's his suit, Emily?" "Did he leave?" "It at the thrift store?" Emily snapped. "Daniel?" But the laughter already stung. I forced a smile. "I prefer being comfortable. Suit isn't who I am." "Comfortable?" Daniel snorted. It's another word for broke. The silence tightened. Glanced at Emily. Her face burned red, but she stayed quiet. That silence hurt more than his words. Margaret poured herself wine. "Emily, you could have chosen anyone. Literally anyone. And you brought this. Look at him. What kind of future can you possibly have with someone like that?" I kept my hands steady on my knees, though my stomach twisted. Emily's voice cracked. "Mom, I love him. Isn't that enough?" "No," Margaret said coldly. "Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't open doors in society. Love doesn't." Thomas raised a hand. "Enough, Margaret. At least he's here. Let the boy speak for himself." I cleared my throat, though my voice felt tight. "I may not have much right now, sir. But I work hard. I take care of your daughter. She won't ever go hungry while I'm alive. That's my promise." Daniel chuckled. "Such a heroic speech. Too bad you can't buy groceries with promises." My jaw tightened. Every word they threw hit me, but I swallowed it down. Fighting back would only make Emily hurt more. I told myself that was why I stayed quiet. Margaret scoffed. "You know what I see when I look at you? It's a man waiting for handouts. Do you expect us to help you climb because we won't?" "I never asked for that," I said softly. "Then what exactly are you bringing to this family?" she pressed. Emily slammed her glass on the table. "He brings me happiness, respects me, which is more than I can say for half the men you tried pushing at me." The table fell silent. For a second, I felt proud of her fire. But then Thomas spoke, calm, measured. "Happiness is fleeting, Emily. Stability matters. You married him already. We can't change that. But you're asking us to respect a man who brings nothing to the table. Hey, that's hard to swallow." The words lodged in my chest. Nothing to the table. Not good enough. I wanted to shout that they had no idea who I really was. It once meant twice. Thomas's stature had feared to challenge me. That wealth, power, and influence had once been mine for the taking, but I bit my tongue, smiled faintly. Instead, and said, "Maybe you'll see in time that I'm not the man you think I am." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Oh, great. A man with secrets. It's very reassuring." "Emily, seriously, what were you thinking?" Emily stood up. "I was thinking with my heart. And unless any of you can show me a marriage where money alone bought happiness, don't lecture me." Her voice broke, but her eyes stayed locked on her family. That gave me strength, even if weakly. Thomas exhaled, waving a dismissive hand. "Sit, both of you. Dinner's almost ready. Don't mistake our silence for approval. We still have a long way to go to convince us." Emily squeezed my hand under the table. "Ignored them," she whispered. But I couldn't. I heard the words over and over. Not good enough. Nothing to offer. Embarrassing. The food came. They chatted about businesses, trips, money. I sat there, like a shadow, nodding when spoken to, smiling when Daniel jabbed at me again. Inside, though, I was bleeding. Every laugh carved my pride deeper. Every glance at Emily's nervous face reminded me that love was all I had loved they despised. When dessert ended, Thomas leaned back. Well, I can't say you impressed me, but you didn't explode either, at least that's something. Daniel clinked his spoon. A dog that doesn't bark. Impressive. Margaret stood, brushing her dress. Emily, one day you'll regret this. When that happens, don't say we didn't warn you. Her words were the last stab of the evening. As we left the mansion, Emily whispered, I'm sorry. I squeezed her hand, forcing a steady voice. Don't be, they're your family. I'll take it. But in my chest, shame and anger coiled around each other like blades. For the first time in years, a dangerous thought whispered back into my mind. They don't know who I really am. But maybe one day they will. Hey, you're quiet tonight, I said as Emily slid into bed beside me. She didn't look at me. I'm just tired. Is it about dinner the other night? Her eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling. I don't want to talk about it. The silence between us stretched, heavy, sharp. I turned to face her. Emily, you know I meant every word in there. I don't care if they mock me, but I need you by my side. That's what keeps me standing. Finally, she turned her head. Her voice was small. Do you ever think maybe they're right?
Oh.
The words struck deeper than Daniel's laughter ever could. I blinked, trying to hold myself steady. You think I'm not good enough for you? I didn't say that, she muttered. It's just, I hate watching them look at me like I ruined my life. It's like I'm always defending you. I swallowed hard. And you're tired of defending me? Her lips pressed tight. She didn't answer. Days went by, but cracks widened. At breakfast, she scrolled through her phone instead of talking. In the evenings, she stayed late at work. One night I reached for her hand across the couch, and she slid it away, pretending to adjust the blanket. I finally broke. Emily, talk to me, please. She sighed, rubbing her temples. I don't know what to say anymore. You're good to me. I know that. But the way they look at you at a sit makes me feel like I settled, like I chose wrong. I felt the air leave my lungs. So you care more about how they see me than how you feel with me. Her eyes flickered with guilt, but she didn't deny it. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. The sound of her voice drifted from the kitchen. At first I thought she was talking to her mom. But then I heard Daniel's name. I froze. Daniel, stop it. He'll hear me, she whispered. A pause. Then her softer voice. I don't know what I want anymore. He's kind, but maybe kindness isn't enough. My feet felt like stone, my chest hollowing out. I couldn't hear the rest before she hung up. I stepped into the kitchen, forcing. My face calm. Who is that? She spun, nearly dropping the phone. Oh, just Daniel. He was asking about the weekend. I nodded slowly. What did you tell him that? That we'd come by. Her voice was shaky, her cheeks flushed. I stared at her. Emily, if you don't want to be here with me, tell me to my face. Don't whisper it into a phone. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. She turned away. You're imagining things. No, I said, my voice low. Trembling with anger I tried to contain. I heard enough. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the bed while she pulled the blanket to her chin. I didn't marry your family. Emily, I married you. But if you're going to let their voices drown ours, then what do we even have left? She stared at me in silence. Finally, she whispered, I don't know. Those words broke me. The following week was worse. Emily barely touched me, though. She lay beside me every night. At dinner one evening, I tried again. Remember when we first met? You told me you didn't care about money? You said all you wanted was someone to stand by your side? I know what I said, she replied, eyes hard. But people change. Maybe I was naive. I set my fork down. So what am I now? A mistake you regret? She froze, eyes clouded with confusion, guilt, maybe even shame. But she didn't answer, and maybe that silence was worse than any word she could have spoken that night. As she turned away from me in bed again, I whispered into the dark, though I knew she wouldn't answer. I've taken all the wounds here. Family's thrown, Emily, but I never thought you'd be the one to twist the knife. My chest ached, my jaw clenched, and for the first time, I began to wonder if my love wasn't strong enough to fight against her silence. The dinner started like any other. It's too much silverware, too much wine, too many eyes waiting for me to slip. Told myself I was used to it by now. I wasn't. Thomas raised his glass. To family, he said. Margaret smirked at me. Two choices, wise and unwise. Daniel almost spit his drink laughing. Oh, that's rich, Mom. Emily didn't laugh. She sat stiff beside me, lips pressed tight. I leaned close. You okay? She didn't look at me. Just eat. That should have been the warning, but I kept my head down and cut into the steak. Then Peter walked in. Arrogant stride, expensive suit, that smug smirk of a man who'd never been told no. Peter. Thomas beamed. Glad you could make it. Sit. Sit. Emily's shoulders tightened. My eyes narrowed. Who's he? I asked. Her fork trembled. Just a friend of the family. I looked around the table. Margaret's smile was too wide. Daniel's chuckle too eager. My stomach sank. Peter slid into the chair opposite mine, flashing me a grin. So you're the husband. I've heard a lot about you. My grip on the knife grew tighter. It's funny, I haven't heard a thing about you. I'm sure you will. He winked at Emily. She looked away, face pale. Something inside me snapped. I set the knife down slowly, carefully, because my hands wanted to throw it. What exactly is going on here? The room went quiet. Margaret sipped her wine. Emily's voice cracked. I can't do this anymore. I turned to her, my chest caving and burning all at once. Do what? She exhaled, trembling. Then the words came out like poison. Us, this marriage. I don't love you anymore. The world stopped. The clinking of glasses, the hum of laughter, all vanished. All I heard was the sound of my heart breaking like glass. My voice came out low. Say that again? Her eyes were wet now. I don't love you. I haven't for a long time. Wait. And I'm with Peter. The knife in my back twisted. Daniel burst out laughing. Finally, some honesty. God, I was dying waiting for that. Margaret smiled like she'd won a game of chess. I told you this would happen. Thomas just looked mildly regretful, like I'd been a bad investment. Well, I suppose it's for the best. I was crumbling inside, but I forced myself. To breathe, I turned to Emily. You could have told me at home? Alone? Why here? Why like this? Her lips trembled. Because you needed to see. You needed to understand it's over. I shook my head. No, Emily, you wanted an audience. You wanted them to see me bleed. Peter leaned back, smug. Don't take it so personally, friend. Sometimes a woman just realizes she deserves better. Better. My voice shook. You think this is better? Emily shot me a look, half defiant, half broken. I want stability. I want a future. With him, I'll have that. It's with you. It's just struggle. Always struggle. I laughed bitterly, though my eyes burned, so the love you swore would last was only as strong as a paycheck. Margaret clapped her hands once, mocking. Don't be dramatic. People outgrow each other. Emily finally came to her senses. Daniel smirked. Guess you were just the warm-up act. My instincts screamed to fight, to shout, to tear this whole table apart. But I sat frozen, staring at the one person I thought would never cut me like. This, I whispered Emily. When I lost everything else, I told myself at least I had you. Was that a lie too? Tears streamed down her cheeks. I loved you once, but love isn't enough. No words could have hit harder. I stood slowly. My chair scraped loud against the polished floor.
Oh, congratulations,
I said hoarsely.
Oh, you've...
All been waiting for this moment, haven't you? Here it is. The fool finally gets what he deserves. I looked at Emily one last time. You killed me tonight. But one day, you'll wake up without me beside you. And that silence will hurt. More than any struggle ever did. She covered her face with her hands, but no apology came. Peter smirked. Guess dinner's over then. I wanted to knock that smile off his face, and only forced a small, bitter smile of my own. Enjoy the meal. It's the only thing tonight. That doesn't taste like betrayal. I turned and walked out. Outside, the night air hit me like a blade. I gripped the railing until my knuckles turned white. My chest heaved, my vision blurred. Inside the house, I heard Daniel's laughter echoing, Dargret's smug voice, Peter's calm arrogance, and beneath it all, Emily's muffled sobs. I wanted to scream, to collapse, to run back and demand answers. But instead I whispered to myself. My voice cracked but sharp. They think tonight broke me. They don't know. It woke me. The house was cold when I walked in that night, too quiet for a place once filled with laughter. Emily's clothes were already gone. Half the drawers, half the closet, half the bed. I sat on the floor in the living room with a bottle in my hand. The first drink went down like fire, the second like ash. By the third, I wasn't tasting anything. Any more? The silence pressed against me. Silence where her voice used to be. Silence where her laugh used to echo. I muttered into the emptiness. Was I really that worthless? The bottle didn't answer. I slammed it down onto the coffee table, the glass rattling. All I gave, all I love, was that not enough? My voice bounced off the walls and came back to me, pathetic, weak, the next night. It was the same drinking, staring at the ceiling. My phone lit up again and again with her name. I didn't pick up. Finally, on the third night, I answered. Her voice was soft. Can we talk? I laughed. Bitter talk? You used me as a stage prop for my own execution. What's left to talk about? I didn't want it to happen like that. She paused. I'm sorry. Sorry. My hands shook. You tore my heart out in front of your whole family. You left me for him. And now you say sorry like it's spilled milk? Emily, you broke me. Silence. Then barely a whisper. I didn't mean to. Then who did? Tell me, who held your hand while you betrayed me? Who whispered in your ear that I wasn't worth it? Told you to trade love for money? Was it your mom? Brother? Or was it just easier for you? Her breathing wavered. I heard tears, but no real answer. I hung up. The phone rang again and again. I didn't touch it. By the fourth night, the bottles were piling up. I stared at the ceiling and thought about ending it. The idea slid through my mind as calmly as if I were deciding what to eat. One step to the balcony. One jump. Silence forever. I stood there for a long time, toes on the edge, the city's lights staring back at me like 1,000 judging eyes. My chest felt hollow. Then my gaze drifted to the old wooden box on the shelf. Dusty, forgotten. My father's box. Something pulled me from the edge. I walked back inside, feet heavy, and opened it. Inside was a folded letter, yellowed with time. My father's handwriting. I hadn't looked at it in years. Hands shaking, I opened it. Son, life will try to convince you that you're worth less than others. Don't let their words build your cage. You carry my blood, my name, and the strength I bled my life building. Never forget who you are. Never bow your head to those who mock you. You are far greater than you allow yourself to be. The words cut through the haze, clear, sharp, alive. My father's voice echoing in my mind. I pressed the paper against my chest. Tears flooded my eyes, but for the first time in days, they weren't the tears of a broken man. I whispered into the darkness, Dad, I hear you. The bottle of whiskey was still on the table. The first time I pushed it away. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes sunken, but something behind them had changed. Emily's voice still haunted me. Her family's laughter still echoed. Peter's smirk still burned into me, but underneath the rage, there was something stronger. No, something alive that had been asleep for years. I clenched my fists. They think they killed me. But they only reminded me who I really am. The man they laughed at was gone. What rose in his place was something they would never be ready for. The city looked different to me that morning. Maybe it hadn't changed. Maybe it was me. For days, all I'd seen was concrete and glass that cut me down. Now I saw a battlefield. I felt ready to step back onto it. I found the number in my father's old ledger. I hesitated only once before dialing. The voice on the other end was warm, older. "Hello, Mr. Harris? It's me." A pause. Then his voice broke with surprise. "My God, after all these years, I thought you disappeared." "I tried," I said softly, "but I can't hide anymore. I need your help." "Need my help?" he replied firmly. "You only need to remember who you are. But if you're ready, son, I'll be by your side until my last breath." My chest tightened. "Then let's meet." When I walked into Harris's office later that day, memories came flooding back my father's meetings. Men in suits whispering his name with respect. Doors that always opened for us. Harris stood, grayer now but strong, and embraced me like blood. "You've been living in the shadows too long. What brought you back?" I hesitated before answering. "Betrayal." His eyes darkened. "So the ghosts finally forced you awake?" I nodded. "I let them laugh at me. I let them treat me like dirt, just so I could have peace with Emily. But she broke me too. Now I realize I made myself small for nothing." Harris walked me to the window, the city lights sprawling below. "Your father once told me, my son will inherit everything. But first, he must learn what it means to have nothing." Maybe this was the lesson. "Now what will you do with it?" I clenched my fists. "I want it back, all of it. My name, my strength, the life I buried." He grinned. "Then you shall have it. The Harris Group never stopped respecting your bloodline. All we needed was your word, and now you've given it." We sat at the long table, papers spread out. Harris briefed me on investments, properties, accounts that still bore my name. I had turned away from it, but it had never truly vanished. My father's empire had been waiting, asleep. "Thomas," I muttered, reading the names of companies entwined with theirs. "He thinks he sits on a throne. He doesn't see that it's crumbling. That's where I'll start." Harris chuckled. "Careful, son. Revenge can be a poison." I met his eyes. "Or the cure." "I'm not striking out of rage. I'm reclaiming what was mine. If they burn in the process, then that's only justice." Studied me, then nodded slowly. "Then let us begin. But move silently. The deadliest ghosts are the ones who don't reveal themselves until it's too late." That night, I sat alone in Harris's office after he left. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight of despair lifting. Instead, there was purpose. Emily's voice still haunted me. "I don't love you anymore." "I'm with Peter." Margaret's sneer. Daniel's laughter. I whispered to myself, "The man you all mocked doesn't exist anymore. He died the night you broke him. What you'll face now is someone you never wanted to meet." When I finally returned to my empty house, I looked. Around at the bare walls and dim lights, this was my grave. But outside, waiting for me, was a kingdom I had abandoned. The phone rang. Harris again. "One more thing," he said. "There's an investor gathering next week. All the people your in-laws rely on will be there. It's where you step back into the light. I'll arrange everything." My pulse quickened. "They'll be there too, of course," Harris said. "They'll be at the center. Imagine their faces when they see you walk in, not as a beggar, but as a man who owns more than they can dream of." I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. They wrote me off as nothing. Let them discover how wrong they were. After we hung up, I stood at the window, staring into the night. My reflection looked sharper, harder, less broken. I whispered to it. I buried the ghost of who I was. Now he's returned. And this time, he won't be silent. Harris's office smelled of leather and ink. The papers lay in neat stacks. But what we were about to do wasn't about numbers. It was about pressure, silence, timing. "They're already shaking," Harris told me as I sat across from him. "Thomas over-leveraged the company. If a few investors pull out, he'll bleed faster than he realizes." I leaned back in my chair. "Good. Then we don't need to destroy. We just need to nudge." He nodded. "Exactly. Quiet hands. Loud consequences." I grinned faintly. "The very thing they accuse me of lacking powers the knife pressing at their ribs already. I almost feel sorry for them." "Almost," Harris smirked. That afternoon I met with one of the investors Thomas relied on, a man named Coltall. Sharp, more shark than human. He narrowed his eyes when he saw me. "I thought you were out of the picture." "Funny," I said, shaking his hand. So did they. And you want me to do what? He asked bluntly. Nothing outrageous. I said, keeping my tone calm, just pull your investment from Thomas's company. Shift it here instead. I slid Harris's proposal across the table. Better returns, cleaner structure, and when Thomas asks why, tell him you found better company. His lip curled. Into a grin, spite and profit all at once. I like it. We shook hands. The first domino fell. News traveled faster than fire. The next morning, Daniel was in the headlines. Drunk, disorderly, escorted by police after a bar fight. His smug face plastered everywhere, his reputation cracking. I read the article aloud to myself, smirking. A knight in shiny armor. Just a fool in broken glass. My phone rang. It was Emily. I stared at it, debating. I answered. Her voice was frantic. Did you see the news about Daniel? He's falling apart? I did, I said flatly. You don't sound surprised. I'm not a pause. Did you have something to do with it? I chuckled softly. Emily, the world doesn't need my help to punish men like your brother. They destroy themselves. She went quiet and barely audible. You've changed? No? I whispered. I've just stopped pretending. I hung up before she could reply. 2 days later, Harris called me again. Thomas is panicking. Cole's departure spooked others. They're whispering in corners, doubting his stability. I felt a thrill in my chest. Whispers grow louder until they become screams. Keep feeding them. It's just enough to spread the cracks. Harris's voice warmed with pride. You're your father's son. He'd be smiling right now. That evening, I stepped into a crowded cafe near their business district. A table full of junior associates, gossiping loud enough for half the city to hear. Did you hear? One said. Thomas might default on the loan. The numbers don't add up this quarter. Another whispered, investors are already looking at alternatives. I stirred my coffee, listening. My heart beat steady, cold. These weren't rumors I started, but they were seeds I'd watered. Emily called again that night. I ignored it. Moments later, she texted, we need to talk, please. I didn't reply, but her words made me pause. For years, she had been my shield against her family. I built my world around her, and she had torn it down with her own hands. Now her voice trembled, like she finally knew what it meant to stand alone. But I wasn't ready to give her answers. Not yet. Later, Harris visited my house with papers in hand. It's working, but we must plan the reveal carefully. If you show yourself too soon, they might rally against you. Wait until their empire is one breath away from collapse then. Step into the light. I stared into the mirror on the wall. My reflection no longer looked broken, no longer looked weak. I've been a ghost too long, I muttered. Let them feel haunted before they see my face. Harris placed a hand on my shoulder. When they do, it will already be too late. I walked to the window, gazing out at the city glowing against the night sky. 3 weeks ago, I was at the edge of a balcony, ready to disappear forever. Now I felt the weight of storm clouds gathering, the chains that once bound me breaking. I whispered into the silence, to the city, to myself. They laughed when they thought I was nothing. Soon, their laughter will choke them. And somewhere inside me, I knew the whispers of karma had only begun. The hotel ballroom glowed with crystal chandeliers, music and the clinking of wine glasses. It was the kind of event where power wasn't shown through fists, but through whispers and handshakes. I stood in the shadows near the back entrance, adjusting my tie. Harris leaned in. Are you ready? I nodded. My chest felt like fire, but my voice was steady. I've been ready since the night they laughed at me. Good, he said. Then tonight, the ghost walks into the light and scanned the crowd. Thomas stood at the center, drink in hand, pretending nothing was wrong. Margaret hovered near him, wearing her smug smile like a crown. Daniel, red-eyed from another scandal, still strutted like he owned the room. And Emily. She was beside Peter, their bodies too close, her eyes glued to the floor. I clenched my jaw, but didn't falter. Thomas raised his voice to the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we mark the future of this family and our partnership with Peter's firm. Together we build what no obstacle can break. Before he could finish, a man in the crowd spoke up. Really, Thomas? That's bold, considering half your investors pulled out this week. The room rippled with uneasy laughter and whispers. Another voice chimed in. What about Daniel's little incident at the club? Ruined your family. Image, hasn't it? Daniel's grin faltered. Margaret hissed. Lies. All lies. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the noise. Not lies, just the beginning. Heads turned. The music stopped. Thomas froze, frowning. You? I smiled faintly. Me. Daniel sneered. What the hell are you doing here? You're not invited? Harris emerged from the crowd and clapped a hand on my shoulder. On the contrary, he's the center of tonight's gathering. Gasps rippled. People turned, whispering my name like they'd finally remembered something buried. Thomas's face paled. Impossible. You walked away. You gave it all up. Took a slow breath. Yes, I left it behind. I tried to live small, to be a man who valued love more than power. But your daughter, your family, taught me something. When you stoop to hide your worth, you invite predators. And each of you fed on me like I was nothing. Emily's lips parted, shaking. You've never told me. I looked at her, my voice sharp. You never asked. Peter laughed nervously. Oh, come on, what's this act? You think anyone here believes you? Harris raised his hand. They'll believe the contracts, the properties, the shares. Every ledger in this city can prove that this man is heir to an empire larger than Thomas could ever dream of. Murmurs erupted. Investors looked at each other with shock, curiosity, greed. Thomas staggered. This can't be real. Oh, it's real, I said coldly. And it terrifies you, doesn't it? To realize the beggar you mocked could crush you in silence. Daniel snapped. So what? You think people will follow you just because of your last name? I stepped closer until I was face to face with him. They'll follow me because your family has already lost everything they thought untouchable. I only had to lift a finger. He went silent, his bravado cracking. Margaret tried to step forward, her voice trembling but sharp. How dare you humiliate us like this? You were part of this family. I clipped each word slow and steady. I was never part of your family, was a shadow at your table. But tonight, the shadow stands taller than all of you. Gasps filled the hall again. Emily finally broke. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice shook, eyes wide with confusion and regret. I looked at her, my throat tight but my heart hard. Because I wanted you to choose me for me, not for what I had. I gave you that trust, and you threw it into Peter's arms. Her eyes filled with tears. I made a mistake. Peter grabbed her arm. Emily, don't. I stared straight. At him, my words cold as steel. You can try to hold her hand, Peter. But tonight, you realize you'll never stand on equal ground with me. Not in business, not in name, not anywhere. His smirk wavered. The room buzzed with whispers. Investors were already drifting toward Harris, asking for details, eager to pull away from Thomas and fall in line with me instead. The balance had shifted. Thomas slumped into his chair, face gray. Margaret clutched her pearls, speechless. Daniel's fists clenched, but no words came. And Emily, she just stared at me. So the stranger she'd dismissed was now someone she could barely recognize. I addressed the room, my voice steady. You've all heard enough. The grace and name my name returns tonight, not to those who stood against me, mocked me, betrayed me. This is your warning. I don't forgive Isoli, and I never forget. The entire hall was silent. Then slowly applause began from the investors, who saw the tides turning. Applause that rolled like thunder through the ballroom. I turned away from my wife, her family. Peter, all of the manned, walked through the storm of clapping voices, each step heavier with power. For the first time in years, I felt alive. The mask was gone. The ghost had risen, and the game had only just begun. The knock came 3 days after the gala, heavy, sharp, desperate. I knew who it was before I even opened. The door. Thomas stood there, shoulders slumped, eyes ringed dark with exhaustion. Behind him was Emily. Her hair was messy, face pale, eyes swollen from crying. For a moment, I just stared at them. The king who once called me unworthy, the wife who had torn me apart, now they looked like ghosts. Emily whispered, "Please, can we come in?" I stepped aside without a word. They sat stiffly on the couch, out of place in their designer clothes. I remained standing. Thomas tried first. His voice was low, almost hollow. "You embarrassed us, son. Humiliated us in front of everyone." I raised an eyebrow. "No, Thomas. You humiliated yourselves. I just gave the truth a stage." He flinched. Emily reached for my hand, but I shifted slightly, letting her fingers touch air. She froze, shame washing over her face. "Listen," Thomas continued, clearing his throat. "My company. We're collapsing. Investors are pulling out. Doors are shutting. You have influence now. You could help us." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Help the same way you helped me? You told your daughter she ruined her life with me? You called me a beggar? And now you want my hand?" His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Emily broke the silence. "I was wrong," she said softly. "I should never have left you. I let them poison me. I thought money meant stability, but it destroyed me instead. Please, I still love you." The words scraped against me like knives. I stared at her, my chest heavy but hard. "You love me now? Where was that love when you twisted the knife in front of your whole family? Where was it when you chose Peter over me?" Tears slid down her cheeks. I made a mistake. I was blind, stupid, weak. But I see now who you are. Please, just give me one more chance. I almost laughed. "No, Emily, you don't love me. You love the power you saw on that stage. You love what I revealed, not who I was when I begged you to just stand beside me." She shook her head desperately. "That's not true. It's exactly true." I cut her off. "You left the man who loved you when I was nothing. You don't get to claim me now that I'm everything." Thomas leaned forward, his hands trembling. "Don't do this. You may hate us, but think of Emily. Think of family." I stared at him coldly. "Family? You don't get to use that word with me. From the very first dinner, your family made sure I knew I wasn't one of you." Silence thickened. Emily sobbed quietly into her hands. "Do you know what family is to me?" I asked, my voice steady. "It's loyalty when the world spits in your face. It's choosing each other when everything feels empty." Us. I gave Emily, that's what she threw away? Neither of them spoke. I sighed, walking to the door. I opened it wide. "You came here thinking pity would move me, thinking guilt would chain me? But I owe you nothing. You chose this." Emily stood. Shakily, her face streaked with tears. "If you close that door on me, you'll regret it." Her voice cracked in desperation. I met her eyes one final time. "No, Emily. I regretted loving you. Closing this door feels like freedom." Thomas stepped forward, but I raised a hand. "Don't." For a long second, they both stood frozen him. Hollow, her shattered. Then slowly, they stepped past me into the cold night. I closed the door. The click echoed through the house, louder than any applause, sharper than any insult. I stood there with my back to the door, breathing heavy. My body trembled, but not from weakness this time, from release. For years, I'd lived with their voices in my head. Tonight, for the first time, I silenced them. I whispered into the quiet, steady, and sure. "You said I wasn't good enough. You don't get to decide I am now." And with that, I walked away from the door, leaving their ghosts outside where they belonged. The house was silent again, but this time, the silence felt different. It wasn't a mirror of emptiness. It was peace. I sat at the table with the old wooden box in front of me. My father's letter lay unfolded, the words worn, but they felt stronger than ever. I spoke into the quiet. "You were right, Dad." I let their words build my cage. I let myself believe I was nothing if they said so. I traced the ink with my fingers. But I'm not in that cage anymore. My phone buzzed. A message. "Emily, please, one last chance. Meet me just once." I stared at the screen, then dialed. She answered almost instantly. Please listen, she begged, her voice trembling. I can't eat. I can't sleep. All I think about is how I destroyed everything between us. I closed my eyes. You didn't destroy everything, Emily. You destroyed us. But me, you accidentally built me. The pain you gave me is what dragged me back to life. I don't want to be the villain in your story, she whispered. You chose that role, I said quietly. I begged for your love when I had nothing. You left. Now you realize who I am, and suddenly you remember love again. That isn't. Levitt's desperation. She sobbed. So this is it? Yes, I said firmly. This is goodbye. I ended the call before she said anything more. This time, I didn't shake. An hour later, Harris stopped by. He placed a folder on the table. The board wants you to be the new face of the empire. They're ready for you to step in fully. I nodded slowly, and Thomas, it's broken. Harris said, his reputation is ruined. Daniel is drowning in scandal. Margaret hasn't shown her face in public since the gala. And Peter. Harris smirked. Turns out his finances were a house of cards. He's finished. Let out a long breath, so it's over. Harris studied my face. Is it? What do you feel right now? I looked at the letter again. Not victory, not revenge. Just quiet. That's enough, he said gently. Sometimes silence is the loudest justice. After he left, I carried my father's letter too. The balcony, the same balcony where I once thought about ending it all. I stood at the rail, holding the paper to the wind. I spoke aloud, as if my father could hear me. The boy who stood here weeks ago wanted to jump. Tonight, the man who stands here is unshakable. Because of your words? Because I finally remembered who I am? The city lights glimmered below me like stars. I whispered, you were right. I am your son. I will never bow again. Later, as I packed up the last of Emily's things, I couldn't help speaking to the empty room. You taught me the cruelest lesson, Emily. Love that wavers when money walks in the door isn't love at all. I thank you for showing me that. Now, instead of years later, I set the box of her belongings near the door for her to collect if she ever dared. Goodbye, Emily, I said softly. The man you left behind doesn't exist anymore. I sat down again with my drink, not whiskey this time, just water. I raised it to the air, to pain, to betrayal, to the fire that burned me down so I could rise stronger. The glass clinked against the table. For the first time, it didn't feel heavy to be alone. It felt like freedom. I looked in the mirror across the room. The man staring back wasn't the one they mocked, nor the one who begged to be loved. He was someone forged. By wounds sculpted by betrayal, armed with silence sharper than blades, I spoke to him. You're not what they called you. You're who you decide to be. For once, the reflection didn't argue. When I finally lay down that night, the house was still quiet. I smiled faintly at the ceiling. No laughter haunted me. No insults rang. In my ears, no ghosts of betrayal lingered. Just me. And for the first time in years, that was enough. I closed my eyes and whispered ashes of the past and the fire of the future. Sleep came softly, not the escape of the broken man. Had been but the rest of a man who had won, not through revenge alone, but through remembering his worth.